The advertisements all use the same two words. Absolutely fireproof. 37 days after it opened its doors, the Iroquois Theatre in Chicago burned to the walls in about 15 minutes and took at least 602 people with it. It is still, to this day, the deadliest fire in a single building in American history. More than the Brooklyn Theatre fire that everyone in the business was supposed to have learned from. More than anything before it or since. And almost nobody who died of the fire. It's the afternoon of December 30th, 1903, Chicago. The Iroquois Theatre had just been open for just over 5 weeks, and it is magnificent. Marble, mahogany, a 60-foot stage. It costs a fortune, and it looks like it. The holiday matinee this afternoon is a musical called Mr. Bluebeard, headlined by the vaudeville comedian Eddie Foy. The house is past full. About 1,700 people have packed into a theatre built to seat 1,600. Every seat sold, the aisles standing, people lined along the back. And because it is a holiday matinee in the afternoon, the audience is mostly women and children. Schools are out, fathers are at work, and it is, by every account, a happy room. They had been told that this was the safest theatre in the city. It was in the advertisements. It was the whole pitch. It was not true, and the man who ran the place had reason to know it. The theatre had been built fast, rushed to open in time for the lucrative holiday season, weeks behind schedule, and to open on time, the things that don't show up in the photograph got left for later. There was no fire alarm, no sprinkler system, no telephone to call the fire department. There were no exit lights. The only firefighting equipment in the building was a handful of canisters of powder called kill fire. The kind of thing you'd keep for a wastebasket, sitting backstage beside a 60-foot wall of painted scenery. The man who managed it, Will J. Davis, opened anyway. The word in the advertisement stayed the same. Absolutely fireproof. There was one real safeguard. The whole industry's answer to a stage fire was a heavy asbestos curtain, a fireproof wall of cloth that dropped down between the stage and the audience and sealed the flames behind it. The Iroquois had one. Remember the curtain. So here's the part worth slowing down for, because every single thing that killed those people that afternoon was a choice somebody made on purpose. Let's start with the doors. Several of the exit doors opened inward, so the moment a frightened crowd pushed against them, the weight of the crowd held them shut. The harder you pushed, the more locked they became. Then there's the exits themselves. Many of them were hidden behind heavy drapes, because visible exit doors are ugly, and the Iroquois was built to be beautiful. Patrons sat all afternoon a few feet from doors they had no idea were there. The doors you could find were fitted with an unfamiliar lever latch called a bascule lock. Not a handle, not a push bar, a mechanism that almost nobody in the crowd had ever operated, to be solved by people in the dark, in a panic, with absolutely no exit light to read it by. And then the worst of them. The stairways up to the cheap upper galleries were sealed off during the performance with locked iron gates, accordion grates pulled across and then locked. They were installed for exactly one reason: to stop people who'd bought the cheap gallery seats from sneaking down into the expensive ones during the show. And on the afternoon of the fire, those gates were locked, as designed, with the galleries full of people behind them. The cheapest seats in the house had been turned into the most dangerous, on purpose, just to protect ticket revenue. None of this was against the rules. The city's fire ordinances were a patchwork, and the building had been inspected and passed. That detail? That matters later. About 3:15 in the afternoon, second act. 16 performers are on stage for a number called In the Pale Moonlight. The lights tinted blue for a night scene. Up in the rigging, an arc light throws a spark, and the spark catches the edge of a muslin drape. The stagehand bats at it. Someone empties a Killfire canister into it. Neither does anything. The flame runs up the drape and into the fly gallery, where thousands of square feet of painted canvas scenery hang in the dark like so much folded kindling. Eddie Foyer's in the wings, half in costume. He walks out onto the front of a stage that is now burning over his head, and he stands there, and he tells the audience to stay in their seats, to walk, not run, and he tells the orchestra to keep playing. By every account, the man does not leave, and for a moment, it almost holds. Then the curtain. The asbestos curtain comes down, and of course it jams. It snags on a light fixture partway down and hangs there, crooked, with a wide gap left open along the bottom. And it doesn't even matter, because the asbestos curtain was not asbestos. It was a cheaper blend, part cloth, and it would have burned as well. The one safeguard the whole industry trusted failed twice in the same second. It stuck, and it was fake. And then the last thing. The performers backstage flee for their lives out the stage door at the rear of the building, and they leave it open. A blast of cold December air rushes in behind the fire. The gap under the jammed curtain becomes a chimney, and all of that heat and flame is drawn off the stage in one breath and out, over the audience, up into the packed upper galleries, where of course, the gates were locked. The fire itself was out, more or less, in 15 minutes. The fire department was there fast, and the flames never swept the whole auditorium seat by seat the way you might picture it. That is the part people get wrong about the Iroquois. The fire didn't have to reach you to kill you. It killed them two ways mostly, and both were faster than the fire department. The first was the smoke. The fireball drawn up into the packed upper galleries filled them with black smoke and superheated gas in seconds. And a crowd that can't move is a crowd that can't breathe. Most of the people who died that afternoon died of smoke and asphyxiation, in the dark, very quickly, where they were standing. The coroner's count bears it out. Far more were taken by the smoke and the crush than by burning. And the second was the crush. At every blocked exit, the people behind kept pressing toward doors that would not open, and pressed into the people in front of them who had already stopped, until the weight of the crowd did what the fire hadn't. The single greatest number of the dead were found at the tops of the gallery's stairways, hundreds of them, trampled and crushed against the locked iron gates that held the whole crowd in place at once. They died against the inward opening exits that the crowd's own weight held shut. They died at the unfamiliar latches with no light to find them by. They died behind the locked iron gates of the galleries, which stayed locked. And some died in the alley behind the theatre, where the fire escapes had never been finished. People reached the iron landings and found no stairs down, only the drop. Across that alley, students in the building opposite pushed planks out from their windows and laid them across the gap, and some people were able to cross them to safety. The newspapers named the alley afterwards. They called it the Alley of Death. By the time the building was clear, the count was at least 602. Most of them were women and children. The audience of a holiday matinee in the safest theatre in the city. What happened to the people who built that trap and called it fireproof? The grand jury moved quickly. It indicted the owner-manager Will J. Davis, the theatre's treasurer, and its stage manager for manslaughter. It indicted the city's building commissioner and a building inspector for malfeasance. It even indicted the mayor of Chicago. On paper, a whole chain of responsibility was charged. And then, every single case fell apart. The defense lawyers argued that the city's own fire ordinances were too vague and too contradictory to convict anyone of breaking them, and the courts agreed. The charges were dismissed, one after another, on the technicality that the rules the men had ignored were not, legally, solid enough rules to ignore. Will J. Davis was never convicted of anything. None of them were. Not one person was ever convicted for the deaths of 602 people. In fact, the only man who ever served a day in jail over the Iroquois was a tavern keeper down the street, whose saloon had been used as a temporary morgue that night. He was convicted of robbing the dead. No survivor and no family of anyone who died ever collected a single cent in damages. But here's the other half, and it's the half that matters when you walk into a building today. The Iroquois changed everything about how those buildings are built. Exit doors that open outward because of this. The push bar panic latch you hit without thinking. The one that opens under the weight of a crowd instead of against it. Pushed into law because of this. Illuminated exit signs. Marked, unobstructed, unlocked exits required by code. Real fireproofing, tested, not advertised. It rewrote the fire code in Chicago and well beyond it. Every one of those exit signs was paid for in advance on one afternoon in 1903 by 602 people who couldn't find the door. The building that killed more people than any single building fire in American history had been sold to every one of them in print as the one thing it most spectacularly was not. The fire didn't kill them. The fire itself was over in 15 minutes. What killed them was a word doing the job of an actual exit, a safety that they were promised, printed at the top of an advertisement where a working door should have been. So the next time you're somewhere crowded, somewhere beautiful, and a sign on the wall promises you it's absolutely safe, take a second before the lights go down and find the door yourself and mind how you go.